I'm back with some more top recommendations for games to check out on Gamepass. Some games for PC, some for Xbox, some for both. Again, if you're watching this at a much later date, some of these games might have been removed from Gamepass. Monster Train. At first glance, this game's aesthetics might put you off, but if you enjoy your rogue deck building card games like Slay the Spire, this is a must play. You're on a train through hell and you'll need to defend your train's pyre from attacking angels and demons. You'll fight across 3 floors of your train, and if your enemies get through your defences, they'll be able to start damaging your pyre. Lose your pyre and it's game over. So you're going to need a little bit of luck, but also you'll make important decisions and take strategic risks that are going to have consequences or rewards. Very addictive and loads of replayability. Warhammer Vermintide 2. Nothing compares for hacking and slashing up hordes of Skaven with friends. There's a good offering of game-changing equipment and progression systems that keep you playing past the main story. If you've any interest in the fantasy Warhammer universe or really enjoyed the Left 4 Dead games, honestly give Vermintide 2 a try, it's great fun. At the very least play through the campaign once. Outer Worlds is a solid first-person RPG. It's set in space where a greedy corporate company have taken control. This is from Obsidian Entertainment. They might sound familiar because these guys made Fallout New Vegas. It shows because as soon as you start up Outer Worlds, you'll be making big decisions and allocating your strengths and weaknesses in the character creation. Originally with these kind of games, my younger self would allocate my attribute points and stats to weapon-related attributes to be better in combat, but these days I'm much more interested in the charisma and dialogue options. There's something really satisfying about talking your way out of a potential fight, or even exploiting people out of extra rewards. I had a good time with Outer Worlds, but it left me wanting much more, so I'm glad a sequel is on the way. Hollow Knight is a brutal combination between Metroidvania level structure and navigation with Dark Souls-like bosses and progression, with everything set in a hand-drawn insectoid universe. They nail the atmosphere. Hollow Knight's world often feels depressing or hopeless, which you personally revert by tackling hair-raising boss battles and getting that satisfying rewarding feeling from coming out on top. Being a Metroidvania, I've got to warn you that I did get lost in the complex level design for hours at a time. Subnautica is one of the best experiences I've ever had with open world survival games when it comes to single player. It says a lot because I usually don't enjoy underwater experiences, but Subnautica had me hooked from the start. You crash land on a water-based planet and you'll need to find a way to survive and ultimately discover or build the means to get off the planet. I really enjoyed the progression of building up your own base and vehicles. It always felt like I was progressing towards my goals or making crazy discoveries. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is actually a single-player RPG from the company that has previously stated single-player games are dead, so I really appreciate this turnaround from EA. We follow a Jedi Padawan who's managed to escape the Empire's purge of Jedi. We're on a quest to complete your Jedi training and rebuild the Jedi Order. There's small elements of Dark Souls-like gameplay, bit of emphasis on parrying attacks with your lightsaber, and some pretty awesome force powers. Plenty of awesome surprises for Star Wars fans, and I've got my fingers crossed for a sequel in the future. One of the latest additions to Game Pass is Hades. It's a fantastic roguelike where you hack and slash your way through the underworld. Hades won loads of Game of the Year awards last year, and as a roguelike it does something different. Every time you die and restart, the story continues and various characters' dialogues actually progress and change. It's very addictive with you becoming a little bit stronger and more experienced in every run, as you push a little bit further every time for victory. Carrion is a horrific little indie game. In a twist, you're playing as a fleshy, freaky monster who gets to stalk and consume helpless scientists, or outmatched soldiers. You'll get to progress and evolve, unlocking new abilities. Eventually, you'll even be able to use your tentacles to mind control humans to turn them on each other, or solve puzzles. It's a pretty cool and unique experience from a new perspective. It's a bit on the short side, but that makes it suitable for Game Pass, and it's definitely worth checking out. I'm a big fan of the Darksiders series with its gothic dark fantasy art style. Genesis is a prequel to the series where you play as the Horseman of Apocalypse, War in Close Quarters, and the Gunslinger Strife. Genesis might first appear like an ARPG like Diablo, but don't let that fool you. War actually plays closer to the original Darksiders games, which are hack and slash RPGs, while Strife has a more dual stick shooting feel to them. We've also got a more isometric camera angle that's better suited for co-op. There's gorgeous art, some pretty epic bosses, fun to play with a friend if you can, and you don't need to have played any of the Darksiders games to enjoy this. The Mass Effect trilogy has some of the very best sci-fi games in the industry. Number 2 is my favourite, where you develop and build up your team and put them to the test. Some of the music from 2 still gives me goosebumps even now. Mass Effect was developed by BioWare, the same guys who did the Dragon Age series, and we see a lot of the same strengths here. Brilliant story writing and characters. It's really satisfying giving out orders in combat, and from Mass Effect 2 onwards you can combine team abilities together for explosive effects. Really useful on harder difficulties. I'm a big fan of real-time strategy, but they're pretty rare games these days. But the Halo Wars series was a pleasant surprise. It's fun on both PC and console, and they managed to design this to play well on a console with a controller. The campaigns have some really high quality cinematics, and in the usual Halo fashion you can do this co-op with a friend. Battling gigantic scarabs are some of my favourite Halo moments, and they can be built as mega units to decimate your enemies with. Pretty awesome. The Gears of War series of games are cover-based third-person shooters. All of them are available on Xbox and some of them are on PC. The story starts with Marcus Phoenix and the Gears soldiers in conflict with the Locust Hordes. The campaigns are short but sweet. At the very least I recommend running through all the campaigns. It's a good experience. Multiplayer is solid too, and in the later games there's the wave-based Horde mode, which I've put a chunk of time into progressing with friends. Gears Tactics is a bonus. It's a solid turn-based strategy game. I quite enjoyed Tactics. The gigantic boss fights were probably the most memorable bit. You'll be micromanaging squads of Gears, albeit it's not quite as in-depth as similar games like XCOM, but hopefully this is just a starting point and we'll see a more advanced sequel in the future. The Surge 2 is a more sci-fi like Souls game, and to be honest this is something I'd only recommend if you're really into Dark Souls games like me. In a futuristic city, robots are rampaging about, and the city itself is under martial law. There's lots of areas that are pretty fantastic to explore with lots of hidden items to discover. Pretty unique to this game is the ability to target specific parts of enemies, to cut limbs off, and then make use of those limbs for your own upgrades. Some of the bosses can be really brutal. It took me ages to do the Delver boss fight. I had to practice loads and come up with strategies for each of the different phases of the fight. It's one of those games that's really tough, but also comes with a great feeling of accomplishment when you succeed. I consider Final Fantasy 7, 8 and 10 as legendary RPGs, and 12 is pretty great too, but that is if you can put up with the graphics that are in some cases over 20 years old, because there's some real storytelling treats here that deserve your time. I'd recommend starting with 7 or 10, because 8 has some more complex systems to learn. Final Fantasy 7 is my all-time favourite game with brilliant storytelling and characters. Final Fantasy 8 is the remastered version, which is a bit hit and miss or inconsistent with the visuals, and it's a very systems heavy game which can be really fun if you're into that. Final Fantasy X is where the voice acting was first introduced. Great story here, and the summon system is pretty awesome too. I personally advise skipping Final Fantasy X too. The combat and job system is pretty good, but it's lacking in other areas like storytelling. I would have recommended Final Fantasy IX too, but it seems that got removed from Gamepass, but it might be back on when you're watching this video later down the line. Undertale. This is a brilliant RPG which may not have the best visuals, but it makes up for it with brilliant storytelling, humour and characters. It's a lesson in good game design. I want to keep this one brief because I don't want to spoil anything, so if you enjoy really good story RPGs then go into this one blind and right now. Last little one, the Telltale Walking Dead games are a more relaxed series of interactive story experiences. Well, I say relaxed, but Lee and Clementine are trying to survive the horrors of a zombie apocalypse. You'll need to make some real gut-wrenching decisions, and there's lots of references or cameos that the TV series viewers and comic readers might pick up on. As a bonus, if you're a big achievement hunter, there's some really easy achievements to pick up here. That's a few more of my Game Pass recommendations. Check out my previous videos for more picks. Let me know your favourite Game Pass games in the comments, and for now, peace.